You would remember when we met in Angola, we inaugurated our anthem. So we will begin with our IPU anthem. So I would request all of you to please rise for our IPU anthem.
参加から始めたいと思いますので、ご起立願いますでしょうか。
Thank you so much. You may have your seats. Hello, hello. Okay. Excellencies, Honorable Members of Parliament, dear colleagues and friends, before we begin our 148th IPU Assembly, let us take a moment of reflection to honor those who have passed away since our last Assembly. I am thinking particularly of His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob, President of the Republic of Namibia, a remarkable statesman whose untimely demise was a shock to all of us. I'm also thinking of other thousands of victims who have died from the many wars raging around the world, from catastrophic humanitarian situations, from terrorist attacks, including at schools, places of worship, concerts, or music festivals, from violence, including the devastating impact of gender-based violence, from sickness and ill health, including malnutrition. Let us bow our heads for a minute of silence, and let this moment be of reflection to inspire us over the next few days in our work as representatives of the people of the world and as representatives of the global parliamentary family, with a key responsibility to build bridges for peace, understanding between our countries. I would urge that members, you all rise for a minute of silence. May their souls rest in peace. Thank you. Mr. Secretary General, honorable speakers and deputy speakers of parliament, but also heads of delegations and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It is an honor to address you here today at the start of my first assembly as president of IPU. The IPU Assembly has returned to Geneva after a long and somewhat unexpected absence of almost 6 years. Some due to COVID-19 pandemic, but also I would like to thank some of our members who have hosted our successful assemblies from 2019, which was held in Qatar, followed by Serbia, Spain, Indonesia, Rwanda, Bahrain, and Angola. Now we are here in Switzerland. Thank you so much, dear colleagues, because you did a good job when these assemblies came to your respective countries. Thank you. But let me also welcome to our assembly for the first time the Honorable President of the Senate of Jamaica, who is observing our proceedings with a view to possible reaffiliation to the IPU and becoming the 181 member of this global parliamentary community. Universality is here at IPU, and we look forward to welcoming other members as well. The theme of this assembly, parliamentary diplomacy, building bridges for peace and understanding, goes right to the heart of why IPU was founded 135 years ago. Indeed, our statutes, in their very first article, emphasize that the IPU has been the focal point for worldwide parliamentary dialogue since 1889. Against that backdrop of an alarming rise in the number and intensity of conflicts, no less than 56 states were experiencing armed conflicts at the end of 2023. It made perfect sense to choose this theme and indeed to adopt peace and security as the IPU's focus policy area for 2024. This subject is also at the top of my priority list as president. and I believe that the process to amend the IPU statutes and rules, on which the working group of the Executive Committee has been constituted and will begin its work shortly during this assembly, offers a valuable opportunity to revitalize the IPU's agility in reacting to crises around the world, including conflict. The IPU was founded on the principle that dialogue is central to the peaceful resolution of conflict. For decades, we have consistently worked to bring together parliamentarians from countries in conflict, whether that is Israel and Palestine through the work of our Committee on the Middle East Questions, the Russian Federation and Ukraine through our task force devoted to that conflict, or our call for the Sahel Initiative, focused on a region in Africa where there has been a particular turmoil in these recent years. Even further, IPU intends to intensify its use of dialogue in other conflicts exemplified by those in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, Venezuela, Pakistan, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to welcome all of you to Geneva and look forward to a very fruitful assembly. Thank you so much for your attention. Okay, I will take this opportunity now to welcome the Secretary General to take the floor.
Madam President of the IPU, since this is the formal opening of this 148th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, let me reiterate what I said in Council. Given that I believe the bulk of participants are here, let me reiterate our congratulations to you on your accession to the high office of President of the IPU and on this maiden assembly that you are presiding as president of this prestigious organization. We look forward to working with you to ensure the success of the deliberations. Madam President of the IPU, honorable speakers and deputy speakers of parliament present here, distinguished members of parliament, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure and it's a source of privilege to me to welcome you back to Geneva, the home base of your global organization of parliaments. Geneva was beginning to miss you because since October 2018, you had not convened here as a global organization. And today, we can walk around proudly to say that IPU is back in town in this city of multilateralism, this city of peace in the world. By meeting here, you are sending, therefore, that strong message that the IPU stands for peace and security in the world, given the fact that this city is seat to many organizations that are dedicated to these noble objectives. As we meet here, articulating the virtues of international cooperation, especially among parliaments, it is important that we be aware of the challenges that are facing the global community. And I believe you will be keen to make sure this assembly lives up to the motto of your organization, for democracy for everyone. As we meet here, We are aware of the fact that there are expectations out there for the IPU and parliaments in general to contribute to ongoing peace processes in the world. But we hasten to point out that according to the international scheme of things, responsibility for concluding international agreements and treaties lies with the executive arms of government. However, you have been very strenuous in pointing out that parliaments and parliamentarians need to be key stakeholders in peace processes. And you have time and again stressed the fact that while governments have that mandate to negotiate, members of parliament can bring the voice of the people to the negotiating table. And so you have extolled the virtues of parliamentary diplomacy that you would like to see unfold wherever there are areas for resolution of crises facing the world. And so you have chosen, and rightly so, the title of your assembly here, which is Parliamentary Diplomacy, Building Bridges to Peace and Security and Understanding in the World. Throughout these several days you will be in town, you will be participating in a host of activities that would allow you to contribute to global efforts to restore peace in the world today. And we want to stress the importance of reconciliation, because when peace processes are concluded, then the real work of Parliament starts. You endorse those peace processes, you create an environment that is conducive to the implementation of the peace agreements, and you work as representatives of the people to promote reconciliation for peaceful coexistence within your societies. And that is why during this assembly, we hope that you and all colleagues, parliamentarians, will talk to one another across the political divide, across the ideological, religious, and other divides, geographical included, and most importantly, that we all learn to listen to one another. And as I make this appeal, I am reminded of what the great philosopher Epictetus said, and I quote, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice and as much as we speak with 1 mouth." So we should together be willing to listen to one another in order to arrive at a common understanding of where we want to go. So I just want to conclude these remarks by expressing my strong encouragement to all of us to work in a spirit of accommodation during this week. We should be mindful of the need to build a world that is peaceful, ever more peaceful, that is conducive to peaceful coexistence between communities, between religions, between people of different points of view. So, Madam President, distinguished members of Parliament present here, we pin a lot of hopes on you, and I'm pleased that I'm able, after so many years, to host such a distinguished gathering of parliamentary leaders from across the world. You will therefore conduct your deliberations, I believe, in a spirit of accommodation, in a spirit of respect for one another, and you will be, I'm sure, keen to make sure that the outcomes of your deliberations reflect the expectations that have been placed on you by the other 46,000 parliamentarians that may not be here today, but most importantly by the people whom you so represent in a very, I would say, dignified manner. Once again, I wish you success in your deliberations, and we are there. My colleagues and I are looking forward to be of assistance to you so that at the end of the day, we can realize our common agenda, which is fundamental to the values articulated by the founding fathers of this organization, Kremer and Passy, dialogue as a means of resolving dispute and misunderstanding. Thank you very much, and welcome to Geneva once again.
Thank you so much, Secretary General. Colleagues, as it has become a practice to include the presentations from our presidents from the Women's Forum, but also our young parliamentarians to inform our general debates, I would now beg your indulgence to welcome them to address us. And here we have the president of the Board of Young Parliamentarians, but I don't know if the woman is ready for... So which one plays first? He goes first. Okay. Okay. So we will first listen to the president of the Board of Young Parliamentarians. Mr. Dan Carden, you have the floor.
Madam President of the IPU, Mr. Secretary General, fellow parliamentarians, good morning. When I was born in 1986, there were legitimate fears the world could tiptoe into catastrophic nuclear conflict. These concerns eroded steadily over the course of my childhood and were supplanted instead by a sincere optimism about the prospects for global peace. The apparent triumph of the liberal democratic model, people argued at the time, had eliminated the need for conflict altogether. States would bring down barriers to political and economic integration, adopt democratic norms, and embrace the rules-based international order, until history itself would come to a screeching halt. But as recent years have shown us, history still has some way to go. The world now feels more unstable and insecure than it has at any point since the end of the Cold War. And the weight of this renewed insecurity can be measured with crushing accuracy by the number of innocent lives lost. 30,000 in Ukraine, 25,000 in Gaza, 15,000 in Sudan, 20,000 in Yemen. In this landscape, it is often young people who bear the heaviest burden. More than 400 million young people between the ages of 15 and 29 are living in a situation of armed conflict. That's almost a quarter of the world's young people, and they are disproportionately represented in the casualty figures. And it is perversely ironic that young people are the first to be recruited into fighting, but are amongst the last to have a say in the diplomatic and peacemaking processes. So the importance of youth participation for peace and security has been reiterated by the IPU and by the United Nations, including in Security Council Resolution 2250. As young parliamentarians, our role in the quest for peace must involve acting as conduits for the voices of the young. But while advocating for greater representation in the diplomatic process may be a necessary step, it is not itself a silver bullet. The search for a genuine and lasting global peace will be a far more arduous task, to the point that it can seem too challenging to even contemplate at times. Because it will demand that we make wide-ranging changes to the nature of geopolitical organization, to the global distribution of resources, and perhaps most importantly, to our outlooks. The liberal dream of the 1990s may have been based on naive and Eurocentric assumptions about the universality of Western democracy and its capacity to insulate us from conflict. But cynicism cannot be the antidote to naivety, and the collapse of the optimism of those years must not lead us to conclude that war is an inescapable feature of the human condition. We cannot stand in idle acceptance that the way things are is the way they necessarily have to be. The past was not inevitable, and the future is not predetermined. Peace is not an unattainable idea. Rather, it is the only battle worth waging. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic week here in Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan Carden, for that. Now we are going to listen to the President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians, Ms. Lopez Castro, who has
Madam President of the Inter-Parliamentarian Union, my dear friend Tulia, Mr. President of the IPU Board of Young Parliamentarians, Dar Carden, Mr. Secretary General Martin Chungong, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to address the Assembly's general debate in my role as President of the Bureau of Women Parliamentarians. I am sure that all of us here firmly believe in the immense potential of parliamentary diplomacy. I would like us to believe and strongly in the huge potential of women's contribution and leadership to peace and security in the world. Next year, we will mark the 25th anniversary of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 3025, which recognizes women's role as vital in peace and security. Regretfully, it has been 25 years that diplomatic and security practices fail to place women and gender equality at the center of the conflict prevention and resolution, at a time when international and human security is under increasing threat. Women and girls' rights and their empowerment are more and more at risk. However, that women, peace and security agenda is an opportunity to redress the situation and address the danger of losses. It is a powerful tool we need to build bridges to sustainable peace and to move from exclusion to democratic decision-making, from gender inequality to gender justice. It is our greatest hope for building more peaceful, prosperous, and stable societies. And it is up to us, parliamentarians of the world, to make this agenda the central focus of our parliamentary diplomacy, by removing any obstacles to gender parity in decision-making, ensuring the participation and leadership of women into peace processes, peacekeeping, peace-building, and security efforts, putting an end to violence against women, both online and offline, which holds women back in all sectors. Let's support women organizations that are fighting injustice, building peace, and taking their rightfully place at negotiation table. Let's support women and girl survivors of sexual violence in conflict and provide reparations for violation of their rights. Let's put money into these policies and stop diverting funds from socio-economic rights into a mad arms race. We cannot wait another 25 years. We must build peace for women right now. This is what humanity needs and what our future depends on. I want to thank you this opportunity. I am now in Mexico in campaign as a senator of Mexico City, but I send you a big hug, my dear family of IPU. Let's keep fighting for gender equality.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates to the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly, it's an honor to address.
I thought the technical team decided to move on. But we are going to listen now to Miss Mary Robinson, who is the first woman president of Ireland. She was a senator for 20 years, and she's also a former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. She is a passionate advocate for gender equality, women's participation in peace building, access to universal health care, migration, human dignity, and climate justice. She is a former president of the International Commission of Jurists and former chair of the Council of Women World Leaders. She is currently the chair of the Elders, founded by Nelson Mandela in 2007. The Elders are independent global leaders working together for peace, justice, and human rights. Colleagues, Mary Robinson.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates to the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly, it's an honour to address the general debate of your 148th Assembly. I'm speaking to you as Chair of the Elders, a group of independent global leaders founded by Nelson Mandela who work for peace, human rights, and a sustainable planet. I'm also speaking as a former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, a former President of my own country, Ireland, and a former Senator. I served for 20 years in the upper house of the Irish Parliament, and in all these roles, and all throughout my career, I've appreciated the opportunity to engage with the IPU. Parliaments play an indispensable role in building bridges for peace and understanding, and consensus on how to tackle shared challenges. This role is particularly valuable today, in an era of increasing social polarization and geopolitical tensions. The IPU plays a critical role as a forum where parliamentarians can come together, exchange experiences, and discuss the challenges of the hour, something I learned from attending IPU events during my time in the Irish Senate in the 1970s and 80s. And it has been a privilege to be invited to address the Assembly on a number of occasions since. Today, I'm happy to hear that the Assembly will also focus on multilateralism in this year when the world is gathering at the upcoming Summit of the Future, convened by the UN Secretary-General, to chart a new pathway forward for international cooperation. It's no exaggeration to say today that we are at a moment of crisis in multilateralism. Our world faces existential threats that can only be tackled collectively, from the climate and nature crisis and pandemics to nuclear weapons and the risks of unregulated artificial intelligence. But at precisely the moment when cooperation is critical, geopolitical tensions and confrontations are rising, and too much decision-making is governed by short-term, self-interested calculations. While the COP28 summit in Dubai last December did make some progress, producing the first text that directly recognized the need to move away from fossil fuels, we remain in a climate and nature emergency. Each month since June last year has seen a new temperature high, and the pathway we are on is unsustainable. Yet, leaders are still not acting at the pace and scale required. We're 4 years on from the onset of COVID-19, a global pandemic that cost the lives of millions and exacerbated inequality between and within nations. But we are struggling to form consensus on a pandemic accord that would help prevent and better prepare the world for future pandemics. 55 years after the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, nuclear powers have not met their commitment to reduce their arsenals. Instead, the few remaining nuclear agreements mitigating catastrophic risk are expiring, and we face a renewed nuclear arms race, with some leaders openly threatening to use nuclear weapons in current conflicts. We see a proliferation of conflicts, including Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine and Israel's disproportionate response to the horrific October attacks by Hamas. The multilateral international peace and security architecture, most notably the UN Security Council, appears completely ill-equipped to deal with these crises. While conflicts elsewhere, from Myanmar to Sudan, are not getting the attention that they need. It's against this backdrop that the elders are calling for long-view leadership to tackle existential threats and to build a more resilient and equal society. Long-view leadership means showing the determination to resolve intractable problems, not just manage them, the wisdom to make decisions based on scientific evidence and reason, and the humility to listen to all of those affected. I'm convinced that with sufficient pressure from civil society and civic institutions, including parliaments, this model of long-view leadership can flourish, as can our hopes for a better future. To those who dismiss such concepts as idealistic or naive rhetoric, I offer the abiding example of perhaps the greatest leader of my lifetime, Nelson Mandela. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the first free elections in South Africa, which swept away the apartheid regime and afforded every South African their democratic rights. I had the honor to attend Mandela's inauguration as president in May 1994. The words he spoke that day have a renewed resonance this year, when 40% of the world's population will have the chance to vote in hugely consequential elections. We have triumphed in the effort to implant hope in the breasts of the millions of our people. We enter into a covenant that we shall build a society in which all will be able to walk tall without any fear in their hearts, assured of their inalienable right to human dignity. Mandela's words are a reminder of and a rallying cry for the crucial leadership role that parliamentarians like you can play in realizing the hopes and aspirations of citizens everywhere. So I wish you well with your conference, and thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates to the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly, it's an honor to address.
Thank you so much. I believe by listening to her, we have all been inspired. Now, looking at the agenda before us, the first agenda is already done. We have opened our meeting, but we were supposed to, it's reading election of the president for the assembly. And it is a custom that the president of the assembly usually is the president or speaker of the National Assembly where the assembly is being held. But this time, since we are in Geneva, so that doesn't apply. So the governing council elected me to be the president because that's the custom, to be the president for this assembly as well. And so I will be presiding over these meetings. That said, I'll be sharing that presidency with so many of you. And now I look forward to receiving requests from your delegations. Each delegation can designate one member who will be assisting me as a vice president for this assembly. And I look forward to receiving those names so that we can share the presidency this time. Thank you very much. As we look forward, item 2 of our agenda is consideration of requests for the inclusion of an emergency item in the agenda of this assembly. And we will be considering item 2 of the agenda in the afternoon when we resume from 5 p.m. So please that's what we are going to do. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to make a few announcements in relation to the organization of our deliberations in this assembly. First of all, we shall start with the list of speakers in the general debate with the segment for presiding officers of parliament. And we are greatly honored this time. The presence of so many delegations from around the world have come forward, so we look forward to hearing all of you. But also, we will still remain with our custom of following the order of speakers, meaning we will have the delegations which are headed by the speakers, but also heads of delegations. So, having said that, and also in recognition of the fact that there are so many delegations here, this morning the steering committee met, and so we had to look at the time that we are going to allocate to the delegations headed by speakers, but also those that are headed by presiding deputy speakers or presiding officers, and those that have heads of delegations who are speakers. So we have made a decision at the steering committee that we will be allocating 5 minutes to the as the total speaking time per delegation. And then we will be allocating 6 minutes for delegations led by speakers of parliament. The young members of parliament who have registered to take space in the general debate will have an additional of 2 minutes. And the permanent observers will have a maximum of 3 minutes. So I would request all of you to adhere to these minutes as you prepare for your speeches, because we will be we will try to be strict on in terms of time, because we would want everybody who has requested the floor to have that chance. And I would like to also inform the delegates or delegations that have not registered that registration is still open until tomorrow at 12 noon. Then we will close the registrations. And as we speak, the list of speakers are already within the hall. So if you don't have one for your own delegation, please look for one and then see if your name is there. If it's not there, you still have a chance to register until tomorrow noon. I have also requested you to send me the names of those who will be assisting me to preside, so we look forward to receiving them. You have the assistants who are in this room. You can send that through them, but also you can grab any member of the secretariat and they will transmit the message to us. So, that said, we will now start following the lists. So we will begin, like I said, with the presiding officers of parliament, and we will begin with Ethiopia. Honorable Tashaga. And Ethiopia will be followed by Azerbaijan, and Morocco should also be getting ready.
This is the update because this is the list that you use.
Okay.
Thank you. Honorable Madam President, distinguished speakers, distinguished delegates and fellow parliamentarians, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express on the behalf of the Ethiopian parliamentary delegation to express the condemnation of the terrorist attack against innocent civilians at the concert hall of Moscow. We extend our heartful condolences to the families of those killed civilians attacked and by the terrorists and for the government of Russia. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to the IPU President and Secretary General for the warm hospitality accorded to the delegation from Ethiopia. It is a distinct honor for me to address you at the 148th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union that is taking place for the first time in 5 years in Geneva, Switzerland. The Assembly is uniquely important for the Parliament from around the world to collectively deliberate on the role of parliaments to address the pressing issue of peace and stability around the world. The theme of the gathering is fitting reminder of troubling state of the global peace. This crucial meeting is taking place at the critical time when the average level of global peacefulness has been deteriorating for the last few years. The theme of the year, parliamentary diplomacy, building bridges for peace and understanding, comes at a very decisive time when the global landscape of peace is facing an external challenge. Today's multiple crises in Africa, in the Middle East, Ukraine and Russia, and the other critical flashpoints have devastating consequences maintaining peace and security in today's world, which requires political commitment and compromise at all levels. Parliaments and parliamentarians have indispensable responsibilities and possess unique characteristics that can be leveraged for broader peace in the world. The Horn of Africa is one of the most volatile regions in the world. The region has been subject to conflict at both the state and societal levels due to both internal and external factors. Lingering conflicts, external militarization, increased fragility is fueling instability and insecurity in an already fractious environment in the Horn of Africa. Parliaments need to have stronger presence and engagement in supporting the governmental efforts towards regional peace and security. The actual linkage between regional peace and integration is particularly evident in the Horn of Africa. The potential for subsistence peace cannot be seen in separation from growing drives from economic integration in the region. In Ethiopia, the 2-year-long conflict in northern Ethiopia ended in the signing of permanent cessation of hostilities agreement in November 2022. The Pretoria Peace Agreement has effectively silenced the gun, opening new chapter for peace and considerations. Conflict through the dialogue and compromise is a practical embodiment of the notion of the African solutions to Africans' problems. It is growing indication that conflicts in Africa can be resolved by applying African wisdoms. The other crucial path to sustainable peace in Ethiopia is ongoing process of institutional justice policy. The flagship transitional justice policy is pioneering approach in the modern Ethiopian history and potentially a major milestone for lasting prospects of peace, justice, reconciliation, and accountability. In the backdrop of the strong linkage between transitional justice and broader peace process in Ethiopia, the government of Ethiopia has shown a firm political commitment. Let me conclude my reaffirmation. Ethiopia's unwavering commitment to the processing importance of parliamentary dialogue and diplomacy at the regional, global, and bilateral levels.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ethiopia, for keeping time. Now we will listen to Azerbaijan, Honorable Gafarova, who will be followed by Kazakhstan, and Ireland should get ready.
Excellencies, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Parliament of the Republic of Azerbaijan, I greet you all as a general debate of the 148th Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and wish our deliberations to be successful and productive. Dear participants, I would like to congratulate the leadership of the Inter-Parliamentary Union for choosing the issue of peace, security, understanding as its strategic policy focus for 2024, and specifically for this general debate. Indeed, the issue of peace and understanding has gained an utmost importance and became a determining factor. Reality is that our hopes for a better world are closely linked with the peace and understanding. Regretfully, today, the world has become more fractured and less peaceful. There are many debates about the ineffectiveness of multilateral mechanisms, which is a result of non-compliance with international rules, double standards, and predominance of interests of certain states. Several days ago, these issues were extensively dealt with in the framework of the 11th Global Baku Forum under the theme Fixing the Fractured World, organized by the Nizami Ganjavi International Center with participation of more than 400 high-level guests from 68 countries. Dear colleagues, there is a general consensus about the need for a stronger, more effective and inclusive multilateral system with the United Nations and its core. What is the most important is that strict adherence to and non-selective application of the universally recognized norms and principles of international law, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, protection of justice should stand at the basis of this system. This is a precondition for restoring and maintaining peace and understanding that we all aim for. Ladies and gentlemen, in view of the growing importance of parliamentary diplomacy, it is necessary to elaborate on the role of parliaments in obtaining peace and understanding, what they can do and what they can achieve. Indeed, parliamentary diplomacy has become an important perspective in global affairs, in particular in the context of current international complexities, where preservation of multilateralism and global cooperation in addressing global challenges continue to be paramount as never before. Of course, it would be quite optimistic to consider Parliament alone as a remedy against the challenges to peace and security, which need to be looked at from a wider perspective. But taking into consideration the notion of centrality of dialogue for peace, they become an effective additional resource of building bridges for peace and understanding. Being representatives of the people, parliaments can make an important contribution to the issues, such as building confidence, trust, and peaceful coexistence. In this context, I would like to commend the role of the IPU leadership, especially Mr. Secretary General Martin Chung-Kong, for providing a platform for the first meeting of the speakers of the parliaments of Azerbaijan and Armenia. Today, both countries are closer to peace than ever before, and such meetings between the two parliaments will be a useful mechanism for constructive discussions. And I would like to underline that unlike some other interparliamentary organizations which have deviated from their declared objectives, the IPU stays true to its vision of dialogue and plays an invaluable role of bridge building. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe peace and understanding are the first and the foremost preconditions for addressing the global challenges that we face today. Without peace and understanding, it is difficult to ensure solidarity and sincere dialogue necessary to jointly deal with the challenges that require global and urgent responses. I believe you would all agree that one of the most serious challenges that demand collective efforts is climate change. To put in other words, our steps in this direction today will determine the fate of our future generations. Dear colleagues, my country, Azerbaijan, was chosen to host the COP29 in November this year in Baku. It is a sign of recognition of Azerbaijan's efforts in addressing climate change, not only at national but also at regional and global scale. We are honored and understand the great responsibility that comes with it. Azerbaijan is a bridge builder and having the potential to unite communities and countries behind a common cause, is ready to help guide the international community to realize a future that is climate-focused, equitable, and sustainable. Engagement of all parties is important in order to advance climate action and achieve our goals. It is only with constructive collaboration, increased commitments, and collective action we'll be able to deliver our shared vision of a sustainable and prosperous future for all. Dear participants, climate change has been identified by the IPU as one of the 4 priority areas that require urgent intervention. The IPU has done a great job in supporting parliaments in their efforts to combat climate change and mobilizing them around climate action. Given the centrality of this issue to the IPU's activities and upon the initiative of the Secretary General of IPU, His Excellency Mr. Martin Chunkong, the Parliament of the Republic of Azerbaijan, together with the IPU, will organize the parliamentary meeting in the framework of the COP29. This meeting will offer parliamentarians to exchange their views and identify what they can offer in the fight against climate change. Thus, the meeting will provide parliamentary contribution to multilateral climate action. And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you all to participate in this conference. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker from Azerbaijan. I had mentioned Kazakhstan will be followed by Ireland. Malta should get ready.
Құрметті төрайым, қадірлі әріптестер, кеше ғана Ресейде жантүршігерлік террорлық әрекет болғаны баршаңызға мәлім. Осы орайда бүкіл Ресей халқына көңіл айтамыз. Қазақстан бейбіт азаматтарға қарсы жасалған кез келген террористік шабуылды қатаң айыптайды. Қазақстан президенті Біріккен ұлттар ұйымына мүше елдерді жазықсыз азаматтарға қарсы зорлық, зомбылықтың бұл түріне бір ауыздан қарсылық танытуға шақырады. Біз парламентаралық одақтың аясында да бұл зұлымдықпен бірлесіп күресуіміз керек деп санаймыз. Өйткені әлемде бейбітшілік пен қауіпсіздік мәселесі толғандырмайтын бірде-бір ел жоқ шығар. Бұл Қазақстан үшін де өте маңызды мәселе. Бүгінгі таңда бұл туралы айтып қана қоймай, халықаралық қатынастарда өзара құрмет пен сенім құндылықтарын нығайту үшін үнемі жұмыс істеу маңызды. Осы орайда президент Қасым-Жомарт Тоқаевтың басшылығымен Қазақстан орнықты дамуға және бүкіл адамзаттың үйлесімді болашағын қалыптастыруға өз үлесін қосып келеді. Оған әсіресе соңғы жылдары елімізде жүргізіліп жатқан ауқымды саяси реформалар айқын дәлел. Қазіргі кезде демократиялық ел, әділетті Қазақстан құру үшін барлық жағдай жасалған. Бұл бейбітшілік пен өркендеудің кепілі. Қазақстан парламенті де бұл жұмысқа белсене атсалысуда. Бұдан бөлек еліміздің ядролық, химиялық және биологиялық қаруға қарсы бастамаларын тұрақты түрде өткізіліп келетін әлемдік және дәстүрлі діндер көшбасшыларының съездерін ерекше атап өтуге болады. Бұл жұмысты алдағы уақытта жалғастыра береміз. Біз бүкіл әлем парламенттері 2030 тұрақты даму мақсаттарын белсенді түрде ілгерілетуі керек деген сенімдеміз. Біз Алматыда Орталық Азия мен Ауғанстан үшін Біріккен ұлттар ұйымының орнықты даму жөніндегі өңірлік орталығын құру бағытында жұмыс істеп жатырмыз. Парламентте орнықты даму саласындағы ұлттық мақсаттар мен міндеттердің іске асырылуын мониторингілеу жөніндегі арнаулы парламенттік комиссия қызмет атқарады. Депутаттар халықаралық жанжалдардың алдын алу және оларды реттеу үшін парламенттік дипломатия тетіктерін қолдану маңызды екенін құптайды. Жақында біз парламентте Қазақстанның бітімгершілік контингентін Голан асуларына жіберу жөнінде шешімді мақұлдадық. Бұл Біріккен ұлттар ұйымының мандаты бойынша біздің бітімгерлеріміздің алғашқы дербес миссиясы. Бұл Қазақстанның жаһандық қауіпсіздік пен тұрақтылыққа қосқан үлесі деп білеміз. Осы орайда парламентарийлер мемлекеттік саясаттың негізгі шешуші бағыттары бойынша озық тәжірибелерін, үздік практикаларын белсенді түрде бөлісуі керек деп санаймыз. Сонымен қатар гендерлік мәселелер жөнінен Орталық Азиядағы парламентаралық өзара байланысты үлгетуге болады. Мұны осында отырған Өзбекстан мен Түркменстаннан келген әріптестерім де растай алады. Біріккен ұлттар ұйымының қолдауымен құрылған Орталық Азия әйелдерінің диалогы аясында біз әйелдердің құқығын қорғау, олардың экономикадағы, инновациядағы, технологиядағы рөлі, әйелдердің бейбітшілік пен қауіпсіздікке қосқан үлесі секілді өзекті мәселелерді талқылап келеміз. Технову мен Орталық Азия қауымдастығы өңірдегі әйелдер арасынан көптеген ерекше талант иелерін тауып танытты. Құрметті әріптестер, біз бүгінгі күні аса күрделі геосаяси жағдайда өмір сүріп жатырмыз. Сондықтан елдеріміздің экономикалық байланыстарын қолдауға бағытталған шешімдер табуымыз керек. Солардың қатарында халықаралық көлік логистика ынтымақтастығын дамыту мәселесі де бар. Қазақстан бүкіл Еуразия құрлығы бойынша трансконтинентальдық тасымалдарды әртараптандыру бағытында тынымсыз жұмыс істеуде. Орта дәліз жаһандық экономикалық байланысқа біздің еліміздің және бүкіл Орталық Азияның қосқан елеулі үлесі. Орта дәліздің нақты құқықтық режимін құрудың маңызы ерекше. Парламентаралық алаңда талқылауға арналған тағы бір өзекті мәселе азық-түлік мәселесі. Бұл ретте азық-түлік қауіпсіздігі жөніндегі ислам ұйымын нақты мысал ретінде атап өткім келеді. Ол ислам елдерінің халқын қолжетімді азық-түлікпен қамтамасыз етуге транзиттік логистикалық маршруттарды дамытуға арналған. Су ресурстарын тиімді пайдалану да маңызды тақырыптың бірі. Қазақстанда өзінің барлық көршілері сияқты климаттың өзгеруі салдарын бастан кешуде. Атап айтқанда бұл су ресурстарының сарқылуы, экологиялық тепе-теңдік пен биологиялық алуандылықтың бұзылуы. 2 жыл бұрын Пакистанда болған жойқын су тасқыны климаттың өзгеруінен көбінесе жаһандық жылымық мәселелеріне жазықсыз елдер зардап шегетінен көрсетіп берді. Осы орайда сіздерге Қазақстан мен Франция президенттерінің бастамасымен Нью-Йоркте биыл One Water саммиті өтетінін жеткізгім келеді. Ал 2026 жылы Қазақстан Біріккен ұлттар ұйымы аясында өңірлік климаттық саммит өткізуді жоспарлап отыр. Бұл тұрғыда біздің делегация ассамблеяның климаттық іс-әрекеттерге арналған серіктестер жөніндегі қарарын толық қолдайды. Құрметті әріптестер, негізгі пікірталастар тақырыбы парламентаралық одақтың 148-ші ассамблеясының тұрақты комитеттерінің тақырыптары сияқты өзекті әрі өте маңызды. Дербес қару жүйелерін, жасанды интеллектіні қолданудың күнделікті өмірге әсерін зерделеу бағытындағы парламентаралық одақтың күш-жүгерін Қазақстан парламенті қолдайды. Қорыта айтқанда, парламентаралық одақтың ұсынымдарын Қазақстан парламенті әрқашан мұқият зерделеп қолданатынына сендіремін. Құрметті төрайым, қымбатты әріптестер, біздің парламенттік мүмкіндіктеріміз бейбітшілік пен өзара түсіністік үшін байланыс және диалог орнату бағытындағы игі мұраттарымызға қол жеткізетініне септігін тигізе алады. Мен алдымыздағы биік мақсаттар жолындағы ынтымақтастығымызға зор сенім артамын. Тыңдағандарыңызға рахмет.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ireland will be followed by Malta. The Philippines should get ready.
Madam President, Secretary General, distinguished members, dear friends, dear colleagues, today we meet conscious of the killing of innocent life in Moscow, and we send our sympathy to the families of those killed. Dear colleagues, as parliamentarians, we're asked to lead. It is our solemn duty to lead our people and to bring people with us. As we say in the Irish language, Ní náirt go cur le céile. We have a responsibility, dear friends and colleagues, as we gather at this assembly, to end human suffering, to end the geopolitical instability, and to bring peace to the world is our shared mission. And that is not, as James Bond might say, if we choose to accept. We have no choice. We must accept that mission. Dear friends, supporting and sustaining peace building is a hallmark of Ireland's foreign policy. Let us reflect, as I said in Bahrain, on the success of the Anglo-Irish Agreement, an agreement, to borrow Mary Robinson's phrase and model, is about long-term leadership. It views peace as a process that is about work, about bringing people together, about fulfilling parliamentary diplomacy. And from our experience in Ireland, we need people to engage, to talk, and to understand each other, but also to respect our differences and where we come from. As our President said this morning to us, the IPU was formed on the notion that dialogue is created so that peace can be resolved and that we can receive resolutions. Dear friends, at this morning, let us stand again with Ukraine and salute the great people of Ukraine in their illegal occupation. Thank you. And in the conflict between Israel and Palestine, let us all redouble our efforts to ensure we have an immediate ceasefire, that humanitarian aid is brought forward, and that all hostages are released. Dear colleagues, Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, speaking in Washington last week, said that the Palestinian people were, to quote, "We see them like us in Ireland through our history." But he also said of the Israeli people that we see them like our diaspora, whose heart never left home, no matter how many generations passed. So, dear colleagues, it isn't about picking sides. It isn't about being for one or the other. It's about each life being equal. Each woman, each child, each innocent human life being cherished. So let us stand up for the weak, the vulnerable, the small, so that we can have a world of equality and a world of equals. And Madam President and Secretary General, can I thank you for your support in terms of equality of representation at the IPU. We are responsible for upholding human society and personal freedoms. And so I urge all of us as members of the IPU to stand up for LGBTQ people around the world, to empower members of the LGBTQ community to run for Parliament and to be elected as parliamentarians. Finally, dear friends, climate change is not an option that we can pick or choose on. Our world is at an important point, regarding climate action. And again here we have a duty to lead and a duty to bring people with us. I'm proud of Ireland's climate action plan, which commits us to halving emissions by 2030 and achieving net zero by 2050. And my final comment this morning, members and friends and colleagues, is that our language at this very important assembly matters. What we say and how we say it matters. At the beginning of this assembly, can I ask you in the spirit of the address of our President to respect each other, to put aside our differences, to work for a shared humanity of a world, to bring peace, to bring equality, to end the suffering and the global inequality. If we're serious about this work as members of the IPU, then can I say to you all and ask you all to act, to think, but to speak wisely. Gurmina Mahagav Galer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. We now will listen to Malta, followed by the Philippines. Mexico will be next.
Madam President, dear colleagues, in an increasingly interconnected world where conflicts persist and misunderstanding abound, parliamentary diplomacy emerges as a beacon of hope, illuminating pathway towards peace and understanding. Sometimes parliamentary diplomacy is often overlooked in traditional diplomatic discourse, notwithstanding that it holds immense potential in fostering dialogue, cooperation, and reconciliation among nations. At its core, it embodies the principle of people-to-people diplomacy, transcending boundaries to cultivate relationships rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Indeed, colleagues, one of the most compelling aspects of parliamentary diplomacy is its ability to engage directly with the citizens of different nations. Unlike traditional diplomacy channels used by the executive, which involves exchange between governments, parliamentary diplomacy engages us, elected representatives, hence the voice of the people. It also serves as a catalyst for the building of bridges between nations, bridging gaps that may exist due to historic grievances, ideological differences, or geopolitical tensions. Colleagues, members of parliament are freer to express their own views, to take different stances, to suggest new ideas, to carry out formal and informal diplomacy. Parliamentarians, therefore, have greater flexibility in their mode of operation. In other words, parliamentary diplomacy provides added value to the traditional diplomatic effort and provides diplomacy with an opportunity of strengthening the process and to obtain better results. The development of parliamentary networks like the IPU, based on personal friendship between members of parliament, are not only easier to develop, but they are also particularly important for situations of crisis, tension, and conflict. We have a lot to report about the conflicts that we are facing, the Ukrainian-Russia war, the Gaza war, and many others. And we are responsible, all of us, in order to play a crucial role in conflict prevention, in resolution, and fostering communications channels, and promoting dialogue between adversary parties. The best practice that can bring about the highest value added lies when parliamentary diplomacy and traditional diplomacy of the executive work in unison. I will mention, for example, the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee in my country as a concrete example. Achieving a common stand on critical issues in international affairs in a forum where different political views, voices are represented. And this gives a clear direction based on the alignment between parliamentary and traditional diplomacy. Colleagues, this is possible only on issues where there is a common political vision, where there is a political commitment in the country and countries, and quickly dissolves when an international matter becomes a local political issue. Parliamentary diplomacy is based on a commitment to developing a culture of dialogue in respect for cultural diversity and identity. A culture of dialogue within the context of dialogue of cultures. This is one of the strengths which parliamentary diplomacy, through the so-called soft diplomacy, gives an open eye of dialogue underpinned by intercultural, respectful and meaningful dialogue. What is important, and I stress this, is the way in which such cultural constraints can be surmounted. Parliamentary diplomacy is in its very nature an interpersonal experience and exercise in networking, friendship and confidence building. The greater the isolation, the greater the propensity for friction. There is therefore need for more training and capacity building within the IPU for parliamentary diplomacy, directed at parliamentarians and their assistants and other staff in Parliament. There is a challenge, dear colleagues, and an opportunity for diplomatic academics and higher formational institutions. In Malta, for example, we have professional academics like the Mediterranean Academy for Diplomatic Studies, where we specialize in professional studies in diplomacy. This is the way that we should continue. And I requote what we decided as speakers in the Speakers Conference, World Conference, the fifth conference of World Speakers in 2020, and I reiterate and I quote, common challenges can only be overcome through global responses, coordination and collaboration between our nations. We therefore reaffirm the key role of multilateralism. So the message is very clear, Madam Chair, and the message is very clear. And today, definitely, we are always already late. So we need to do much more to do it together in order to address these everlasting conflicts without any exception, the one that I already mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Now we'll listen to the Philippines, Mr. Zubiri, followed by Mexico, and then Indonesia on the line.
Thank you very much, Madam President Tulia, Mr. Secretary General Martin Chungong. And fellow parliamentarians, this is Miguel Zubiri, the Senate President of the Republic of the Philippines. Our theme on peace echoes the ideals of the foundations of the IPU. Today, as the world is buffeted by conflicts, such as the recent shooting attack in Crocus City Hall in Russia, which resulted in the loss of innocent lives, and to which the Philippine government and our delegation here, the IPU, extend our deepest condolences to the bereaved families. The search for peace remains an urgent task, an elusive dream. The raging strife that dots the world underscore the mission that we parliamentarians should pursue on behalf of mankind. And that is to mount a campaign to pause war, to stop the bloodshed and end the suffering of innocent civilians whose lives have been disrupted, but whose hopes for peace have not been dashed by war. We in the IPU have a rich heritage that inspires confidence that, if united and determined, we can, as our predecessors have done, be facilitators of peace. To recall, the advocacies of our fledgling union then later became a powerful force that gave birth to peace institutions such as the United Nations. This legacy of bold thinking and brave action should spur parliamentarians of the world today to craft strategies that will silence the guns of this time. Ending the misery of people caught in the crossfire of conflicts has become our common parliamentary agenda #1. For 100 years, the Philippines has allied itself with the cause of peace. In 1925, when we sent our first delegation to the IPU conference, we already manifested our country's position to give primacy to diplomacy as a means to resolve conflict. Through the years, we have subscribed to IPU's foundational principles of renouncing war as a foreign policy tool, a belief enshrined in the fundamental law of our land. We come here today to reaffirm our adherence to that tenet. We come here today as a nation that also suffers from the fallout of wars far from our shores. Local conflicts have global effects, my dear colleagues. Whether they are in Europe, in the Middle East, or in Africa, theaters of war threaten all people. Our country is no exception. For one, geopolitical tensions damp growth prospects of economies, slowing down the recovery from the ravages of the pandemic. Conflict-caused trade disruptions trigger imbalanced trade deficits and create an inflationary environment that harms the poor. Global food security is harmed, pushing food prices up and punishing the populations teetering on hunger. Supply chain disruptions can shut down factories, empty store shelves, spike oil prices, and leave food on the table more expensive. In the midst of these uncertainties, I strongly believe that the IPU can span trenches of discord and serve as a bridge of peace and understanding. Let me be honest, finding common ground is a mission not for the easily discouraged, but as parliamentarians, we have been able in our halls and in this union break the impasse to reach a compromise in the past. When such is pursued, a healthy respect of views with a deeper understanding of the circumstances to be addressed, consensus can be found. Domestically, we have applied the same template for forging a principled and permanent settlement to one of the world's longest and fiercest secessionist wars. For decades, the island of Mindanao in the southern Philippines has been plagued with violence and strife. Conflict between our government and the secessionist movement had a huge toll, displacing 2 million people and raking up a death toll of 120,000 lives. But I'm proud to say that our Congress played a pivotal role in the cessation of hostilities by passing a milestone Bangsamoro Organic Law, which recognized the autonomy of the Bangsamoro people and gave us the mechanism for correcting the historical injustice that they have long faced. On a personal note, I am particularly proud spearheading this measure as being a proud son of Mindanao myself. We are reaping the dividends of a scent of peace from the ruins of conflict. Since the passage of the Bangsamoro Organic Law, we've seen a dramatic turnaround towards peace and stability in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. And we have been able to engage former secessionists to be our partners in progress and in nation building. Swords have been pounded into plows, and land rich in resources and talent are irreversibly marching towards shared prosperity. We in the Southeast Asian region have also gathered parliaments for frank and fruitful discussions on how to strengthen our place of shared past and common future as a zone of peace. However, in the West Philippine Sea, a number of geopolitical analysts have predicted that it could be a major flashpoint in the region. Let me emphasize that the Philippines has consistently adhered to the international rules-based order, ensuring freedom of navigation in the areas and practicing restraint in dealing with harassment and provocation from our neighbor in the north. It takes community of nations to preserve and nurture peace. Thus, we appeal to the international community to support our stand in promoting freedom of navigation and adherence to the international rule-based law of order in the West Philippine Sea. We have shown that dialogue across political ideological divides is possible. And to wrap up, our belief in the power of dialogue is why I urge us all to harness the parliamentary ties that binds us and strengthen the values we share in our common dream of all our people living in a world of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll listen to Mexico. Honorable Marcela Castillo. Oh, she's there? Okay. Will be followed by Indonesia, and Ghana will be on the line.
Con su venia, señora presidenta, honorable asamblea, La percepción de la paz ha evolucionado dejando de ser concebida como la falta de conflictos armados a gran escala. Ha evolucionado a una que sienta las bases para un desarrollo sostenible y de seguridad internacional. Desde el año 2016, la ONU adoptó el concepto de paz sostenible que profundiza en la necesidad de adoptar estrategias integrales de prevención, de atacar las causas de raíz, de generar los mecanismos de mediación y reconciliación e impulsar también iniciativas de desarrollo que ayuden a reducir el riesgo de la aparición de conflictos para consolidar la paz duradera. La paz sostenible significa tolerancia cero para la violencia contra las mujeres, cero violencia en las familias, en las comunidades, en las escuelas y como ámbito también en el laboral, en el político, también en la parte económica, en lo cultural. Deja de existir paz sostenible cuando existe violencia contra las mujeres. La paz solo existe con igualdad, con paridad de género en las estructuras todas del Estado y con la participación evidentemente de las mujeres en las decisiones gubernamentales en todos los órdenes de gobierno. En México, la preservación de la paz es una prioridad nacional y la estamos construyendo día a día a través de la paridad, la inclusión y la diversidad. Hoy el Poder Legislativo mexicano se encuentra integrado de una manera paritaria. La Cámara de Diputados está conformada por 500 miembros, 500 legisladores, de los cuales la mitad son hombres y la mitad son mujeres. El Senado de la República también cuenta con la paridad. La paridad de género en México es un principio consagrado en nuestra Constitución y prevé garantizar la participación de todas las mujeres en las decisiones y estructuras del Estado. La participación activa de las mujeres en toda la vida pública de las naciones constituye la construcción efectiva y participativa y representativa en todas las políticas públicas. La inclusión de las mujeres en los procesos democráticos, toma decisiones y la toma también de decisiones contribuye al desarrollo de una paz sostenible. La inclusión y la diversidad son los elementos indispensables para construir la paz. Por ejemplo, en México tenemos una acción afirmativa para incluir comunidad en las diputaciones LGTB+1. También para incluir a la comunidad afromexicana, a los migrantes, a los indígenas, a quienes padecen una discapacidad. Esas son las acciones afirmativas que tenemos en México para la inclusión. La construcción de la paz debe de convertirse en la principal agenda de los parlamentos, observándola desde la pluralidad y creando puentes de entendimiento, de diálogo, de cooperación y alcanzando todos los acuerdos de las fuerzas políticas en todos los niveles de gobierno. Como poderes legislativos, tenemos que tener ese compromiso de generar los marcos normativos para la creación de las oportunidades que promueven la prosperidad, para lo cual se requiere un entorno que también promueva el respeto a los derechos humanos a nivel internacional y, por supuesto, a nivel interior en nuestros parlamentos, pero también en todos nuestros países. Hacemos un llamado a seguir trabajando a través del diálogo interparlamentario y la diplomacia parlamentaria, promoviendo estos encuentros donde se exponen y se ven reflejadas la pluralidad, las visiones, la diversidad de todas las naciones que todos aquí representamos, brindando así la atención a los derechos de todas las personas. Las resoluciones y declaraciones que aquí pactamos y adoptamos son las voces de nuestros pueblos. Es nuestro deber entonces llegar a resultados tangibles. Por ello, la Cámara de Diputados que presido mantiene sus puertas abiertas al diálogo y a la cooperación, porque la paz y el desarrollo sostenible es nuestro objetivo, empleando siempre la diplomacia parlamentaria como herramienta para alcanzarlo, y que la democracia esté al alcance de todos, como lo dijo el secretario general Martín Chongón. Es cuanto. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Now we'll listen to Indonesia, Honorable Maharani. Ghana will follow, then Côte d'Ivoire on the line.
Yang mulia para ketua parlemen dan presiden IPU, yang terhormat para anggota parlemen dan para delegasi, tahun 2024 merupakan ujian bagi komitmen kita untuk membangun dunia yang damai, adil, dan inklusif. Tatanan global sedang berada di persimpangan jalan karena dunia yang terfragmentasi. Jika kita melihat ke berbagai pelosok dunia, kita dapat melihat perang dan konflik terjadi di berbagai bagian di dunia. Konflik telah menjadi new normal di berbagai penjuru dunia. Krisis dan ketegangan geopolitik semakin meningkat, dan semua ini terkait dengan persaingan antara kekuatan-kekuatan besar di dunia. Akibatnya, jutaan warga sipil menderita di wilayah konflik dan perang. Singkatnya, kita tengah menyaksikan tidak adanya perdamaian. Namun, meskipun terdapat tantangan global yang signifikan, parlemen harus dapat memperkuat upaya kolektif kita untuk memastikan bahwa setiap orang, terlepas dari latar belakang mereka, bisa hidup dengan damai. Berbagai permasalahan global seperti perang, rivalitas kekuatan besar, pemanasan global telah berdampak langsung bagi rakyat yang telah memilih kita. Sebagai wakil rakyat, parlemen harus memimpin dan memberi contoh, lead by example, dengan memperjuangkan 3 pilar perdamaian, dialog, diplomasi, dan kerjasama. Diplomasi parlemen perlu dapat memperkuat diplomasi pencegahan, preventive diplomacy, yang membutuhkan lebih banyak dialog dan kerjasama di antara negara-negara. Dalam hal ini, kita harus membangun budaya damai, culture of peace yang membutuhkan komitmen untuk menjunjung tinggi toleransi, menghargai keragaman, membangun saling percaya dan pengertian. Dan yang terpenting, menolak kekerasan dalam penyelesaian sengketa. Kita harus mengedepankan dialog dan bukannya mengambil tindakan sepihak. Kita harus mengedepankan kerjasama dan bukannya menciptakan perpecahan. Para delegasi yang terhormat, hari-hari ini umat muslim di seluruh dunia sedang merayakan bulan suci Ramadan, bulan penuh berkah yang mewujudkan nilai-nilai perdamaian dan toleransi. Sayangnya, pembunuhan, pertumpahan darah, dan pengeboman oleh Israel terus berlanjut di Gaza. Ini adalah kekejaman luar biasa yang tidak dapat dijustifikasi dengan cara apapun. Berapa banyak lagi nyawa yang harus melayang sebelum masyarakat internasional bergerak? Apakah kita akan tinggal diam? Kepada negara-negara besar, tolong gunakan pengaruh Anda untuk mengembalikan kemanusiaan dan tidak memperpanjang peperangan. Dunia tengah menyaksikan, kita semua yang ada di ruangan ini juga tengah menyaksikan. Dan kita tidak bisa menutup mata terhadap penderitaan warga sipil di Gaza. Di masa kritis ini, segera dimulainya gencatan senjata sudah menjadi suatu keharusan. Saya mendesak semua pihak yang terkait untuk memastikan akses kemanusiaan yang aman dan penghormatan penuh terhadap hukum humaniter internasional. Tujuan utamanya adalah untuk menciptakan solusi 2 negara berdasarkan hukum internasional dan resolusi-resolusi PBB. Indonesia akan selalu berdiri bersama Palestina dan mendukung perjuangan rakyat Palestina untuk menjadi negara merdeka. Para delegasi yang terhormat, Kita juga membutuhkan perdamaian yang abadi di Ukraina dan juga di tempat-tempat lain dari Yaman hingga Myanmar. Untuk mewujudkan perdamaian yang abadi dimanapun, komunitas internasional dan terutama negara-negara besar harus memberikan tekanan kepada pihak-pihak yang bertikai untuk duduk di meja perundingan. Perdamaian diperuntukkan agar semua rakyat dapat meningkatkan taraf hidup mereka, anak-anak dapat bersekolah, dan mereka yang sakit dapat berobat ke rumah sakit. Saat ini kita tengah bergerak mundur dalam upaya kita untuk mencapai SDGs dan mengakhiri kemiskinan secara global. Akan sulit untuk mencapai tujuan-tujuan ini tanpa perdamaian sebagai fondasinya. Karena tidak ada pembangunan tanpa perdamaian dan tidak ada perdamaian tanpa pembangunan. Kita tidak boleh lupa bahwa perdamaian dan pembangunan adalah dua hal yang saling mendukung. Perdamaian adalah kunci untuk mencapai kemajuan di suatu negara. Pembangunan membutuhkan perdamaian, keadilan membutuhkan perdamaian, demokrasi membutuhkan perdamaian. Upaya mencapai perdamaian menjadi lebih sulit di tengah dunia yang terfragmentasi dan lebih multipolar. Fragmentasi dunia yang disebabkan oleh rivalitas kekuatan besar dunia telah menyebabkan ketegangan geopolitik di berbagai belahan dunia. Sementara dunia yang multipolar menyebabkan kekuatan menengah dapat lebih berperan di panggung global dan regional. Namun, multipolaritas saja tidak dapat menjamin perdamaian. Untuk menciptakan perdamaian dibutuhkan tatanan global dan institusi global yang kuat. Dalam hal ini, kita perlu mereformasi kelembagaan multilateral yang dibentuk pada era pasca Perang Dunia Kedua. Reformasi PBB, terutama Dewan Keamanan PBB, harus menjadi inti dari agenda memperkuat institusi global. Harus ada representasi yang lebih luas dalam keanggotaan Dewan Keamanan PBB, dan hak veto di Dewan Keamanan PBB perlu ditinjau kembali. Para delegasi yang terhormat, saya meyakini bahwa parlemen dapat memainkan peran penting untuk menciptakan perdamaian dalam keamanan global. Dengan menggunakan kewenangannya, parlemen dapat membuat undang-undang yang melindungi hak-hak setiap orang tanpa memandang latar belakang mereka, termaksud melindungi perempuan, anak-anak, dan penyandang disabilitas. Kita juga dapat memperkuat diplomasi antar parlemen dan pendidikan untuk mempromosikan budaya damai. Parlemen anggota IPU harus melipat gandakan komitmen kita untuk menolak kekerasan dan membangun masyarakat yang cinta damai. Dari ruang sidang ini, kita harus mengirimkan pesan yang jelas kepada masyarakat internasional. Cukup sudah, jangan pernah lagi menggunakan kekerasan untuk menyelesaikan sengketa. Saya percaya bahwa jaringan antar parlemen dapat membantu memberikan nilai tambah untuk membangun saling kepercayaan, kerjasama, dan pemahaman yang lebih baik di antara bangsa-bangsa. Akhirnya, saya mendorong kita semua untuk membawa pulang hasil pembahasan kita yang positif di Geneva ini ke parlemen di negara kita masing-masing. Di masa-masa yang penuh tantangan ini, kita semua anggota parlemen harus berperan untuk menciptakan perdamaian. Oleh karena itu, marilah kita bekerja sama, tidak pernah menyerah untuk memperjuangkan perdamaian untuk kepentingan rakyat yang kita wakili. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Speaker. Now we will listen to Ghana. Right Honorable Speaker Bagbin will be followed up by Côte d'Ivoire, Serbia. Oh, will we still have light? No, we will not have time. So we will end up with Côte d'Ivoire. So Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the delegation from Ghana, I bring you all warm greetings. I would love, on behalf of the delegation, our beloved Chairperson, Secretary General, colleagues, speakers, distinguished members of Parliament, the team of this conference, Parliamentary Diplomacy, Building Bridges for Peace and Understanding, emphasizes the crucial role that legislative bodies currently play or can play in shaping international relations and promoting stability. Parliament serves as a valid platform for diverse voices to converge, discuss policies, advocate for constituents, and uphold shared values. By extending these deliberations onto the global stage, parliamentary diplomacy enriches diplomatic discourse with democratic legitimacy and grassroots representation. Honorable members, in order for parliamentary diplomacy to successfully achieve its goals, it is important to strike a balance between reality and perception. It should be firm in upholding universal values and principles, while also respecting the rules and norms that shape not only the international system, but also the various cultures and values that make up our diverse world. The second part of the theme of this conference, Building Bridges for Peace and Understanding, is one of the fundamental goals of parliamentary diplomacy. Building bridges for peace and understanding requires mutual understanding and dialogue among diverse stakeholders and engaging in open, honest, and respectful communication. While open, honest, and respectful communication enables individuals and communities to bridge differences, reconcile, and build trust, dialogue allows people to listen, identify common ground, and collaborate towards solutions. The impact of building bridges is profound, particularly in fostering peace, stability, and cooperation on both regional and global stages. It is with this that I want to urge all parliaments to focus on the establishment of parliamentary friendship groups or associations. Ghana is doing that with almost all parliaments in the world, and very soon our delegations will be visiting you. Parliamentary democracy and parliamentary diplomacy has become a valuable tool for building relationships and promoting cooperation between national parliaments and parliamentary institutions. As a result, many parliaments now encourage their members to participate in interparliamentary organizations, bilateral exchanges, and other parliamentary diplomacy initiatives. Through these efforts, parliamentarians can represent their country's interests, foster dialogue and cooperation with counterparts from other nations, and work towards building consensus on international issues. It is this that really will have to be emphasized by all of us. Parliamentarians have to oversee international negotiations, ratify and enforce international agreements, facilitate multi-stakeholder dialogues on international issues, disseminate information on international issues and organizations to citizens, and participate in intergovernmental negotiations and peace-building processes. By doing so, parliamentarians play a critical role in positively shaping global affairs. Treaties and agreements that are executed by the executive are required to be ratified by parliaments. If parliaments and parliamentarians are not involved, they will not understand or appreciate the issues, and that is why the representatives of the people should keenly and actively be involved at the negotiation table. Honorable colleagues, one central theme that has emerged in this discussion is parliamentary diplomacy, and is fundamental to building a better world. And there can be no doubt about this. By providing platforms for dialogue, collaboration, and conflict resolution, parliamentarians can bridge divides, promote mutual understanding, and advocate for the peaceful resolution to conflicts. The democratic legitimacy and grassroots representation inherent in parliamentary diplomacy enrich diplomatic discourse and contribute to more inclusive and effective global governance. In conclusion, therefore, we want to look towards a future that expresses our deepest gratitude to Ghanaians, to parliamentarians all over the world for their tireless efforts in promoting peace and understanding. Despite the challenges we face, there is hope for a future where nations come together to cooperate and to solidarize. We must reaffirm our commitment to diplomatic engagement, prioritize peace-building efforts, and future collaboration among nations, so we can build a more peaceful and prosperous world for generations to come. For democracy, for everyone, leaving no one behind, we move together to build bridges for peace and understanding. Together, we can. I thank all of you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ghana. We will now hear from Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Serbia. Serbia will be the last. Please bear with us because we started a little late, so these two will be the last, and then we will make some announcements. Côte d'Ivoire, you have the floor.
Excellence, Madame Tulia Axon, présidente de l'Union interparlementaire, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les présidents de Parlement, Monsieur le secrétaire général de l'UIP, chers parlementaires, honorables invités, je voudrais d'emblée vous féliciter, Madame Tulia Axon, pour votre élection en qualité de présidente de notre prestigieuse organisation et exprimer par la même occasion à vous ainsi qu'au secrétaire général ma profonde gratitude et mes vifs remerciements pour l'organisation de la 148e Assemblée de notre Union dans ce magnifique pays qui nous fait l'honneur de nous recevoir. Félicitations à vous pour le choix du thème retenu pour nos réflexions, à savoir diplomatie parlementaire, tisser des liens pour promouvoir la paix et la compréhension. Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues, le thème retenu pour la 148e session de l'Assemblée de l'Union interparlementaire offre une opportunité à notre communauté parlementaire de se positionner dans la prévention des conflits par le dialogue, des échanges de bonnes pratiques et d'envisager ensemble la coopération entre représentants de nos nations pour favoriser la démocratie, la paix et l'entente. Il est vrai que la diplomatie n'est plus uniquement une prérogative attachée au pouvoir exécutif, elle est également exercée par le Parlement, non pas pour supplanter la diplomatie classique, mais agissant en précurseur ou en appui de l'exécutif. Oui, chers collègues, la diplomatie parlementaire est une diplomatie des peuples, qualifiée à juste titre par l'ancien président de l'UIP, le Chilien Ricardo Lagos, de diplomatie directe, une diplomatie qui est un puissant outil de rapprochement au service des États et des peuples. À cet effet, nous, représentants du peuple, loin de la légitimité populaire, pouvons significativement contribuer par nos actions à prévenir les guerres et les crises, à favoriser un climat de paix, à travers l'instauration de la culture, de la tolérance politique et religieuse, ainsi que de la réduction de la pauvreté par la coopération économique et le partage d'expériences. Chers collègues, Mesdames et Messieurs, malgré cet important outil, il nous faut constater la persistance de différents conflits à travers le monde, notamment le conflit armé en République démocratique du Congo, le conflit armé opposant la Russie à l'Ukraine, ou encore celui opposant Israël à la Palestine, avec ses conséquences humanitaires sans précédent. Ce constat doit nous amener à nous interroger. Comment pouvons-nous coopérer plus étroitement et efficacement pour prévenir, pour résoudre les conflits, promouvoir la justice sociale et adresser les problématiques mondiales tels que le changement climatique, le terrorisme, les inégalités, etc. La réponse à ces questionnements nécessite une action concertée, une conjugaison de nos efforts à travers une coopération accrue entre nos institutions parlementaires. Cette coopération parlementaire multiforme peut être bilatérale ou multilatérale, comme c'est le cas de notre union commune. Mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, je crois fermement que la diplomatie parlementaire doit être une force motrice pour l'établissement d'un ordre de paix et de compréhension. C'est fort de cette conviction que j'ai fait de la diplomatie parlementaire un axe majeur de ma politique pour rester dans la droite ligne du président Alassane Ouattara qui inspire nos initiatives dans ce sens. Au plan multilatéral, le Parlement ivoirien est membre de plusieurs organisations interparlementaires, dont l'Union interparlementaire. Nous avons régulièrement pris part aux travaux de celle-ci pour partager notre expérience et encourager le raffermissement des liens de coopération parlementaire qui sont des gages d'entente mutuelle. Cet engagement fort de notre Parlement en faveur de la diplomatie parlementaire s'est matérialisé par la tenue à Abidjan de la 14e conférence des présidents d'assemblées et de sections de la région Afrique de l'Assemblée parlementaire francophone, de la 45e conférence de l'Union des parlements africains et de la 18e conférence de l'Union des parlements membres de l'Organisation de la conférence des États islamiques, l'UPC. Tout ce regain de dynamisme vaut à notre Assemblée nationale d'assurer en ce moment la présidence de l'UPA et de l'UPC après avoir assuré celle de l'APF de 2019 à 2022. Mesdames et messieurs, je crois en la force de la diplomatie parlementaire et reste plus que jamais convaincu que nos assemblées parlementaires ont le pouvoir d'influencer positivement les relations internationales et nous devons chercher des moyens d'intensifier nos efforts dans ce domaine. C'est pourquoi je voudrais du haut de cette tribune appeler à ce que cette 148e Assemblée soit le point de départ pour des actions concrètes et des résultats tangibles. Il nous faut notamment mettre en place au sein de notre Union un groupe de haut niveau composé de présidents de parlement qui aura pour mission de mener des actions diplomatiques dans les pays où la paix est menacée. C'est le lieu pour nous d'appeler notre Union à prendre une recommandation en vue d'exiger un cessez-le-feu immédiat de la guerre israélo-palestinienne. Par ailleurs, la diplomatie parlementaire ayant aussi pour vocation d'être au service de la démocratie et de l'état de droit, il nous faut prendre des décisions courageuses pour la dénonciation de toute violation ou atteinte aux valeurs démocratiques qui peuvent menacer la paix et la cohésion au sein de nos États membres. Enfin, je voudrais déplorer et condamner l'attentat perpétré le vendredi à Moscou qui a occasionné plusieurs pertes en vie humaine au moment où nous nous réunissions pour parler de paix et de sécurité dans le monde. Mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, c'est sur ces mots que je voudrais clore mon propos, en vous remerciant pour votre aimable attention, mais en vous disant, la Côte d'Ivoire, championne d'Afrique de football, avec à sa tête le capitaine Alassane Ouattara, vous dit merci.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Now, our speaker from Serbia, please, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you very much, Honorable Madam President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to address you for the first time at a forum which has such a long tradition and significant role as the IPU. Until recently, I served 3 terms as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia, and I fully intend to put all of my skills and experience at work to enhance and further strengthen parliamentary democracy worldwide and nurture the values that this organization has cherished for the last 135 years. I strongly believe that equality between our countries, mutual respect and appreciation, and free exchange of opinions are the absolute foundation of international relations. In an era marked by rapid changes and complex challenges, the importance of parliamentary diplomacy cannot be overstated. peace. It seems that the world peace has never, in the past 80 years, been more fragile than today, which is why we need to remember that peace depends on the respect for international law. In the absence of that respect, those with more military might or those that have less to lose prevail, leading the world to perpetual wars, loss of lives, and instability. More or less something that we are increasingly witnessing today. Thus, as we gather here, I'm compelled to address a matter of profound significance that not only deeply impacted my nation, but also tested the very fabric of international law and the foundational principles that govern our collective coexistence. I refer to the NATO aggression against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, which commenced on this day, 24th of March, 25 years ago in 1999. This event stands as a stark example of direct violation of fundamental principles and rules of international law, including the Charter of the United Nations and all other imperative norms that prohibit the use of force. This act of aggression against a sovereign country, which did not as much as put a foot on another country's territory, acknowledged even by NATO and its member states as illegal under international law, yet paradoxically deemed legitimate, was one of the most critical moments in recent history where the established norms of international conduct were openly breached. The arbitrary use of armed force without the explicit approval from the UN Security Council, except under strictly defined conditions of self-defense, which wasn't the case, is unequivocally prohibited. Actions taken by NATO against Federal Republic of Yugoslavia created a dangerous precedent that still threatens the very order established by the UN Charter. At the turn of the century, the unlawful NATO aggression, which inflicted immense suffering and devastation upon my country, resulted in subsequent unilateral declaration of independence by Pristina in 2008, thus representing a further violation of international norms, UN Charter, and the UN Security Council Resolution 1244. It is important to stress today that these events represent the opening of Pandora's box, unleashing far-reaching repercussions felt way beyond our borders for years and decades to follow. Without any doubt, today, we witness the ripple effects of those disastrous events unfolding nowadays across Europe and beyond. Today, as tensions escalate and the specter of global conflict looms, it is imperative that we learn from history and redouble our efforts to prevent such catastrophic outcomes. Everyone across the world, regardless of their size and might, must steadfastly uphold the principles of international law, respecting under any and all circumstances sovereignty and territorial integrity of internationally recognized countries, members of the United Nations, as a fundamental principle of international law, fostering dialogue and cooperation as the only pathway to sustainable peace and security. Regardless of international presence, the UN Security Council Resolution 1244, Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija endure dire conditions. Over the past year, 13% of the Serbian population has been forced to flee from Kosovo and Metohija. Through the lens of this somber reflection, we are reminded of the paramount importance of parliamentary diplomacy in addressing, resolving, and most crucially, preventing such breaches of international peace and security. Parliamentary diplomacy embodies the potential to build bridges where walls might otherwise stand. By fostering open and honest communication between nations, we can anticipate and resolve conflicts before they escalate, ensuring that dignity of all states, nations, and people are preserved. I thank you for your attention, and on behalf of the Republic of Serbia, I'm very much looking forward to our continued cooperation and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serbia, for that speech, and thank you everybody who has already taken the floor and some of you who will be taking the floor in the coming sessions. So I would let the Secretary General announce the quorum, and then I'll come to you with the final announcement. Secretary General?
Thank you, Madam President. The quorum for the Assembly, according to the rules, is established in taking into account the number of delegations that have registered and have picked up their badges here. My colleagues of the Secretariat have confirmed that 137 delegations have checked in here at the International Conference Center in Geneva. And so on the basis of that number, the quorum for the Assembly will be 69 delegations. So you need 69 delegations in this room each time the Assembly is called on to take a decision between now and the end of the Assembly on the 27th. Thank you.
Following the announcement that was made by the Secretary General, delegates, I wanted to request you, because we are in the month of Ramadan and we have a number of countries that we have the delegates who are fasting, and so they expect at some point to go break their fast. Now, you will remember in the morning when we were announcing the program of the day, we mentioned the fact that we will be considering the emergency items in the afternoon at 17 hours. Now, 17 hours, having to listen to those who have submitted the emergency items, and then should it happen that, because they are allowed according to our rules, should there be a country that would like to take the floor to reply contrary to that, they have to be given the floor. That might take us some time, and our colleagues may not be able to go on time to break their fast. That said, I'm going to request you, if you would allow us, instead of beginning the emergency items at 5 or 17 hours, we should begin a little bit earlier. That means we should begin at about 16 hours or 4. So, yeah, that will give us more time for them to go break their fast and then come back to join us for the invitation that is it a cocktail?
Yes.
Yeah, for the cocktail. Now, that said, we will also begin our afternoon session at 2:30. So the speakers that I'm going to mention, they are going to begin our session. So please be here on time so that we also give consideration to other issues. And in the afternoon, the presidency will be shared with Australia. Australia will be presiding, and the speaker from Zambia. And then I will come later in to join them. That said, we had, I now call the speakers who will be beginning when we resume at 2:30, effectively. So we have the speaker from Turkmenistan, we have the speaker from Djibouti, and the speaker from Uzbekistan, and then the other speakers will be called in as the session will be progressing. I take that you have accepted the change of time today, so that we take into account our colleagues who are fasting. Have you accepted the change of time? It is so decided. Thank you very much. See you at 2:30.